Welcome to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers, newbies, and veterans, and everyone in between. We're hosted by M.A. Lee with the assistance of Remy Black and Edie Rooms, all from Writers Inc. Books. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Each episode lasts as long as it takes to fix a quick dinner, grab a short commute, or take a brisk walk. Resources and links are in the show notes. Visit us at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Now, on to this week's episode. Hi, everyone. It's the third check-in for the Word Count Challenge here in August. I continue to meet my goal of 500 new words daily, no matter the interruptions. It's needed a word mix of fiction and nonfiction to achieve those 500 new words. And other writing tasks are still occurring, all in a mix of daily fun time with family and commitments and responsibility. I actually started this episode draft on Monday to finish words for that day because other things were going on that prevented my finishing 500 new fiction words. I've discovered issues with the daily push for new words, issues related to achieving the word count that can affect how readers see your writing. Let's start with talking about creativity. Creativity is well known for being messy. Over the years, I've discovered the creative process is scattered and slow. Once I have words, the bones of my writing, whatever the focus is, things do speed up. Getting from blank page to word-filled page can take longer than I like. The actual writing can fly, but I do need the scene, its purpose, the character's conflict and motivation, and the plot's impetus firmly in mind. That prevents off-topic details and vignettes from entering the scene. Many writers use advanced plotting, but I discovered a few years back that too much advanced plotting can create a barricade to my desire to write. And desire to write means that I will write. Lack of desire means I'm not turning out anything special in my opinion. Have you ever read books with pages of what you consider filler? I've had that this summer in reading a couple of authors new to me. I loved the premise of the story, but whole swaths of the book were filler. Details on life on the trail, or details of making something. Had those details proved necessary to the plot, or to character development, or had they been about something more interesting than pitching a tent or stitching a dress, then I might have appreciated them. Instead, by the novel's end, I classified those words as filler, unnecessary to story and to my entertainment. To check that my reading dismay wasn't me, I picked up a couple of old favorite reads from 10 years ago and 20 years ago and reread them. Did they have filler? I didn't spot any. The story moved quickly, often more quickly than I wanted. I returned to those books of my reading dismay and glanced through to find the filler. No, I was right. They were unnecessary to story and a little boring, honestly. Written, I suspect, for the word count only, not planned to develop the story, although maybe to delay elements of the story, and certainly not a creative inspiration that added to the story. My suspicions could be wrong. We all know what happens when we assume. But I trust that you, as a writer, are not depending on filler. Advancing the plot, character revelation, epiphanies for characters and readers, touches of enhancements like metaphors and motifs, and rhetorical devices that give joy to the reading, these are all necessary to the story. Creative inspiration is more than simple originality, developing something entirely new. Originality is rare. What we most often see is something modified in a new, original way. Something old with many elements, surprising elements, that are new to this form. 3 other markers denote creativity. One is fluency, an ease or facility with generating ideas. A page filled with brainstorming, even when ideas seemingly don't match. Or a concept map, clustering ideas. These develop inspiration. A second marker is flexibility, which looks at something in a new way, changing viewpoint or direction, juxtaposing unrelated details, and finding the connections. These show creativity. The third marker is elaboration, adding details, embellishments, and enhancements to make something more real, or pleasing, or understandable. Elaboration is not filler. Filler is not aesthetically pleasing. Filler is not related to embellishments that clarify an image or an elemental thing. Filler is not creative, not unless it connects to the larger purpose, the secret key to the conflict, a hidden weakness in the villain, or an elaborate red herring that actually contains the clue to the mystery. The dismaying reads did none of the above. The filler added words, unnecessary words, except to achieve a preset count. And that's the scary problem with the word count challenge. We focus on reaching the word count, not on writing a great story. We might clean up the words, but they remain filler when they do not serve the story. In my current story, I could easily add a filler, 50 words on closing up a barnyard for the night, another 50 on kneading bread, about 200 or 250 on a needless conversation that updates the particulars on their past 3 years apart, 100 more on descriptive details from a smashed nose and the various tatters in clothing, and another 100 in a needless description of a past altercation between the primary character and a threatening brother who will never appear in the story. 500 words that fills up the story and slows the pace with long paragraphs that do not intrigue the reader but rather glaze over his eyes. We writers battle filler every time we sit down to write. Lack of sleep, sickness, boredom with our own story all contribute to filler. Inflexibility, chemical disruptions in our brains, and a focus on social media create barriers to our creativity. We may think we're writing a story, but instead we're filling the page with minute details on bread making when 11 simple words would do. She kneaded the bread, then left it to its last rise. Rant over, I promise. On to the third check-in for this word count challenge. The battle with filler marked the middle segment of my story last Wednesday, and it would have been so simple to fall prey to that villainy. Instead, I worked on the difficult encounter of the protagonist with his father, walking into the encounter rather than tiptoeing around their past conflict or rushing in like a fool to reach the heart of the conflict immediately. It was difficult writing. I could have filled it with bees buzzing around flowers, a distant crow calling to its harem, a cow studiously watching son and father. I didn't. We have to focus on the primary purpose of the scene, however difficult it is to write, however long it takes to find the right approach. 2 hours and only 525 words. But those exact words will stay, although I may add touches of the crow in revision. It is a murder mystery. The black crow symbolizing death would be an appropriate embellishment. Thursday, I squeezed out time, morning and evening. I'm still in the same scene. It's still difficult, with logical steps into their ode conflict to unveil. 550 words. Friday, at the close of the day, I worked on the newsletter drafted last week. This job always takes longer than I like, but I added 152 new words to the newsletter, then uploaded it to my email service for publishing next month. I had to do the newsletter this week. For next week, when I'll have little access to working on the laptop for things like corrections to stories and uploading a schedule-based email and working on a design brief cover, the time I will have must be maintained for handling the last podcast episode for this month next Tuesday. The hour after I finished everything with the newsletter, I spent on the story, and those 350 words flowed right out, the payoff for setting up the opening to the scene properly. Saturday started well, but I ran out of time to write, cut short by time with family, a higher priority than writing. First corrections, based on last week's proof to the third short story, tallied 117 words. With the third segment of my current writing finished, I looked over that rough shape of the manuscript and decided to clean it up with a good draft. I reached the end of the first segment of the story. When I matched my rough estimate to the draft tally, I had gained 390 words, giving me a total for the day of 507 words. On Sunday, I continued with the draft. I'm still not to my last written word, but I have gained 598 new words. Monday, I returned to the rough manuscript with totally new words. I'm in the last segment. The true villain has yet to be revealed. The murder must be explained. It's difficult. I managed 240 words before I ran out of steam, so I started the draft for this podcast and found myself in the conflict between inspired writing versus filler. Oh well. A total of 515 words for the day. Today, the focus is this podcast episode with the start to finish, record to end after I draft it. How did I do with the challenge this week? I'm maintaining the 500 new words minimum. No grand days this week, but it's a check mark for the first 3 rules. Nor have I taken any days off. Check on Rule 4. Do I have 3,500 words for the week? Yes, indeed. It's closer to 4,500 words because I'm nearing 1,300 words today, which means the final Rule 6 for made-up words is not applicable 3rd week in a row. I'm still on track. But I'm facing a week that will be horrible for writing. Fun for me, but little time for pen on paper. This is the test. I know I can squeeze out an hour per day, maybe 2 hours on a couple of days. Next Tuesday, I'll need those 2 hours solely to handle the podcast episode, which means I may do my cutoff on Monday. But that leaves me with no writing on Tuesday and only 4 days to make up any missed word count. It's a race to the end of the month. I need to finish the 4th story before I leave, giving me a first proofing to do. The 2nd and 3rd proofing of the 3rd story still to do. None of those words can be counted until they do in the corrections. I have ideas for the final story in the collection. This final story will be my writing focus, along with the podcast episode. Then it's the 28th to the 31st, the final 4 days of the challenge. I wanted 15,500 total words. I'm currently at 13,155 words. I definitely will achieve the monthly goal. Will I achieve a daily minimum of 500 new words with no days off? That remains to be seen. I do wish that I could compose fiction on screen. I can tear through nonfiction on screen. I find myself unhappy writing fiction on screen. Maybe I'll make a new try at it in this coming week. A more detailed jot list, a more elaborate notes page, and an iPad with a keyboard. Yes, that might work. I'll try it. We'll see. Whatever troubles you face in the upcoming week, Remember our motto for the right focus. Right on. Thanks for listening to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by Emma Lee from Writers Inc. Books, assisted by Renee Black and Edie Runes. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Music is licensed through Audio Jungle, called Background Music Loop. Its creator is Alexander Polishchuk, known on Audio Jungle as Plastic 3. The music comes in different iterations. Show notes and resource links for this and other episodes can be found at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at linkbooks@aol.com when you have questions, comments, and speculations. We will try to answer you as quickly as possible. By the way, we will not mine your email address. That's rude. If you find value in our content, share with your writing friends or write a review. We're small beans here without the advertising budget of the big peeps, and you can make a difference. And whatever occurs, right on.